Sorry, y'all. My phone's just being a little shyster today. Better. Hello. I'm gonna mute my keyboard here, my laptop. So I learned last time, because normally I do my classes on Zoom, so I learned that YouTube has a bit of a lag. So if you have questions and I don't get to them right away, I'm not ignoring you, I promise. It just takes a second for them to come to me, all right? So I see that we have a few people here. I have no idea how many people were planning on coming, but seeing as it's 3:01, I'll wait like a minute for people to jump on in here and have a quick sip of water. Okay, but we may as well get started. Why not, right? All right, so my name, I'm gonna adjust this here. My name is Caitie Kennedy. I am the Redken regional educator for the San Fernando Valley, right outside of LA. So, and I do dabble a little bit in LA, Beverly Hills area as well. The Antelope Valley, you name it pretty much, I got it. I hail originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I was a color correction and blonding specialist, along with being a GM, a general manager of a hybrid salon that was equal parts commission and rental. And then I went on to become a bit of a sweet liaison type of gal for all of you Salon Republic folks. So yay, that's a little bit about me. I love to blonde and I love to do redheads and I love to do all of it. So I love these money piece classes and I know they're things that all of you look forward to. So if you guys would be so kind and enter into that chat quickly for me, what you want to get out of today, like maybe what your struggles are with money pieces. We're going to talk a lot about money pieces and freehand lowlights today. So let me know kind of what your need to knows are, what you struggle with, what you need a little bit of help with. Happy to do it. A little bit about today, what I have planned, and I can always alter anything for your guys' needs, but we're gonna do a quick foil on one mannequin, and then we are gonna tone another mannequin. So I wanna show you kind of what that looks like, what that process looks like in the foil, and then also making a money piece while depositing color. Because I think one thing us hairstylists get a little too lost in is that we need to lighten a money piece to get one, and that's not necessarily true. So we're gonna do something a little bit of both sides. All right, so in the chat here, Courtney says depth placement, love it. We're also gonna be talking about a little bit of freehand low lighting today, and freehand low lighting is my secret weapon for creating depth in money pieces. That's my go-to. I love it. We're here for it. So we are gonna run with that for sure. All right, guys, so we're gonna be working with Flash and Bonder inside today and some Shades EQ. Cool? Cool, cool, cool. All right, so for example, one of the reasons people struggle a lot with money pieces is that they have a tendency to over blonde, right? They over blonde the hair because they want it to be as light as possible. What they forget to do is leave in some depth, okay? Just leave in a little bit of depth. It's super important. So I'll show you an example. This is a mannequin that was bright orange at one point, but if you look here, she has a pretty decently strong money piece that goes all throughout the bottom here, but her hair would look entirely blonde if she didn't have that piece of depth right there, right? It would just be all blonde, versus now when you see it from the front, it has a little bit of that depth to create that money piece there. So when you put a little cute bejeweled thing in it, you can have a nice little money piece, right? If she parts different ways, that's a good question. So today we are focusing on a middle part, just because honestly, a lot of my clients, if they flip, so for me, for example, I'm a flipper. I'll wear my hair down the middle sometimes, I wear it to the side sometimes. So for your flipper clients, a middle part is gonna be your best bet, because if you go too far to one side or another, it's gonna be completely unbalanced. However, you could also educate your client on how that could be a positive. You know, if you do a heavier money piece on one side than the other due to parting, when they flip it one way, it would look really soft and natural. Versus when they flip it the other way, they'd have this really bold, striking money piece. So it's almost 2 hair colors in one, which is awesome. If you are parting off the side, it's really important to focus your lightness on where that part is. Doesn't matter if it's on the middle, if it's on the side, whatever have you. When we're creating money pieces, you almost want to create a shield around that front hairline area, right? Because that's where that money piece lives. That's where people see it. That's the ultimately important part about it. So I almost always go for a little bit of a shield placement with my money pieces. Sometimes I add in teasy lights. It depends on how strong the money piece wants to be. So for me, what I absolutely love is altering and really manipulating my money piece with my glossing and toning formulas. You have a lot of control of how much softness you bring and how much intensity that money piece has. I think us hairstylists, we're like, oh, it's all about the foil placement. It's all about the foil placement. And yes, foil placement is ultimately important, don't get me wrong. But equally, and sometimes more so important, is our glossing formula after the fact. Okay? Are we cool with that? We all good? So for our first one here, my lovely lady, and all of these mannequins have been deeply traumatized from the Redken exchange at one point or another, so she is no exception. So what I have for her is here, I've sectioned out a money piece area, and again, it says, you know, Yesenia is looking for different parts, which we can totally talk about. The only reason that I have her in the middle is because I have to make as much use of my mannequins as I possibly can, right? So, for her money piece, I've sectioned out this front area here. How many of you feel you struggle to find the right thickness of money piece? Like you don't know how thick is too thick? How much blonde should you do? And then sometimes when you think you are like doing too much blonde, it doesn't show up at all, right? So a good assessment of a money piece is usually an inch or over an inch should be that width of your money piece on the part. So when Yesenia's like, me girl, same. You know how many times I've worked on mannequin heads to perfect my money piece? Saying a long time. Okay, so here on that middle part here, do you see how wide that section is? You know, and I think hairstylists, when we're looking at this, we're like, oh my gosh, she's gonna have 2 stripes. She's gonna look like an e-girl from TikTok. I can't do that. But what you need to realize is that money piece has to be strong enough to pop. If you blend it too much, it's not gonna have the same money piece effect, right? So instead, when you look at something like this, when I'm doing a really bespoke, very tailored money piece, I can guarantee you I'm going in with a root shadow after the fact. You know, just a root tap, just to soften that a little bit so it's very wearable. And if someone wants a really strong money piece like a TikTok e-girl, look at me, I'm learning young kid terminology, what's up? That's totally fine. You can have a stronger money piece. Just know that if you don't go in and bump and blend this area a little bit, it's going to be a lot harsher and have higher contrast, which that's a look on its own. It's not wrong, but it's definitely more of a trendy feel. Got it? You feel? You feel, girl? Okay. So as a whole, with my money pieces here, with lovely Ellie, one of my many Ellies, here I am. This is what I'm looking at. You know, and there's her money piece, and that's the back. So, I mean, all of this, it's about an inch or more in a headband shape. Okay? So, when I'm creating a money piece, I want to, if anything, for me personally, proper shadow root. Ooh, girl, we talk about that good today. We're going to really talk about that today. It's going to be awesome. I honestly think a shadow root gloss formula is more critical than the foil process. I really do feel that way. Again, A million artists can tell you a million different things, right? There's no right or wrong when it comes to creating a money piece. Everybody has their own way of doing it. I'm sure that you guys have probably taken other money piece classes before, and they've told you something completely different than I have. Just know that all I want today is to add to your toolbox. If there's just one thing today that you take away from me that you think is gonna be really helpful, it's worth it, right? So you get to kind of Frankenstein together your own style of doing things. And that's exactly what all this education's for, right? So for me, I like to have a very strong money piece placement. I do a lot of slicing, alternating with really, really, really dense baby lighting. Because for me and my style as a hairstylist, I know that I'm gonna have to gloss anyway at the end, and I have so much more control with that money piece in my gloss and bump formulation or shadow root formulation. Does that make sense to you guys? How many of you are guilty of putting too much faith in a foil and not thinking as much about your gloss? Because for the longest time, I was the same. I feel you. Full honesty. Okay, so when we are talking about money pieces, I just said that I really like to do a lot of dense foils, slices with a little bit of microfoiling. And the reason I do that is because I know that the more I lift, the more control I have. And that's why I choose to do it that way. All right, so honestly, my foil within itself isn't anything super groundbreaking. I'm gonna be honest with you about that. My strength as a corrective colorist is especially in my formulation, and that's where I really shine. So when I'm about to do this, we're gonna foil her out in this area, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like, how often I slice versus how much I baby light, and all those things. Do I teasy light? Do I not teasy light? What are my choices, right? Money pieces are like handwriting. Everybody does them different. Everybody does them differently. So really have a lot of courage in yourself and the expert that you are to forge your own path, right? Forge your own path and find a good money piece way that really works for you and your style of color. So today, we're talking about mine. All right, so today we are going to utilize Flash Stuff with Bonder inside, Redken's Flash Stuff with Bonder inside, and normally as a hairstylist, I rarely go above 20 to 25 volume in foils. Again, my personal style. My whole shtick behind the chair was blonding ethically. Like, you're gonna have hair on your head when I'm done doing your hair. It's gonna take longer, but it's worth it. That was my marketing as a stylist. You know, maybe your marketing is that you can get through a blonding super fast and efficiently. That's great too. Nothing wrong with that. All right. So, with my lovely lady here, as I drop my foil combs, for her, I am using 40 volume, and again, the only reason I'm using 40 volume is because she's a mannequin, okay? Most of the time, I really don't dabble in 40 volume much, just because of the damage it can cause the hair. And this, again, is my personal style. If you use 40 volume a lot and it works for you, no judgment, man. I'm just a low and slow gal. I find that if I use a lower volume developer, I'm gonna get more controlled results with less warmth. But again, today, because she is a mannequin, she's gonna get 40 volume. Those of you that have worked with mannequins, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm gonna scooch my camera in closer as well here too, so y'all can see. Grab some gloves here. And I do foil with gloves on, honestly, because I don't know how many some of you have been in the industry for, but for me, the acid mantle on my hands is destroyed from being a blonding specialist for 10 years. So little bleach stains now turn into giant chemical burns, and they hurt way worse than they used to. So I do foil with gloves. It took a while for me to become okay with that. But here I am, learning, growing, right? I'm gonna scooch my little trolley over here. All All right, I'm gonna scooch you guys closer as well. And I'll turn her so y'all can see. It's part of the fun parts of digital education, right? All right, so what I want you guys to look at here, here's her whole curtain. This is all of the stuff that I would blonde, right? And the other thing I want you to think about in this money piece foil placement is think about your guests that are coming in. Maybe your full foliage clients, and it's been months since you finally get to see them, right? And coronavirus has had a financial impact on all of us. And what's going to be really helpful here is while you're doing your money piece, this can be a service all on its own. So you can show them how you can give them this really striking color with more minimal placement. There's still going to be a lot of foils here, but it's not going to be as expensive as a full foliage that they normally get. We all have to get kind of clever in how we're going to service our guests for their budget. Okay? So what I like to do with my guests, normally, I like to find where their hair has a tendency to break. Everybody has a spot in their hairline where they kind of break apart. Mannequins are a little bit more difficult. Hers looks like it wants to be right here. That's kind of where it seems to want to be, which is right under the parietal, which is pretty typical. However, because she normally breaks there, I'm going to move my sectioning up a little bit, okay? This is going to be one section that I tackle, and this is going to be another. And the reason that I go a little bit higher than where her hair naturally breaks is because I want it to look really seamless. If I just broke it apart where her hair naturally wanted to break, you would see that separation in her money piece. So I'm trying to get as a cohesive result as I possibly can. So I am just going to isolate this one. I'm going to move it back. So, let me know if you guys can see that. I'm trying my best. So for her, the first section I choose, I do a really fine slice, and a lot of my money pieces are fine slices. And when I'm doing that fine slice, okay, might even make it a little finer than that. When I'm doing that fine slice, I really want to be diligent about that hairline, okay? Really diligent about it. I want to be very cautious of where I'm putting it. So some of you right now are like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. I'm not going to do a slice right on the face. That's fine. You could easily make this a really soft baby-like here. Totally could. The only reason is when she pulls her hair back, and I mean, this is for the client that wants that strong money piece, right? Super strong. When she pulls her hair back, I want her to see blonde first thing, right? I want her to be a blonde here. Okay? So, again, I'm going to try to adjust my hand placement here so you guys can see. Boop. There we go. So my hands personally, this is not, I'm utilizing my body right now so you guys can see. This is not how I would normally stand with a client, but I want you guys to see what I'm doing, okay? So I would take this whole fine money piece here, or slice rather, place a regular foil, and everybody's got a little bit of a different method of how they fold their foils. You know, I think now being an educator in some capacity for the last, 6-7 years, people feel very strongly about how they fold their foils, right? Some of you might fold your foils on the outside so you can re-secure, right? Some of you might not fold your foils at all. Honestly, y'all, whatever works for you. Different strokes for different folks. It's all good. It's all good. The other key to lightness here that I really want to mention, as I always do, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, I'm just not getting the lift I want. No matter what product I use, I just can't get people light enough. If that's the case, if you guys ever feel that way, saturation is key. So if you're looking at this foil right here, especially knowing that I'm taking slices, I'm fully saturated, okay? And then I want to have you guys getting close to that piece right there, right? She's really close to the scalp because I took really fine sections. Also, for me, I like to feather. I feather a lot. And when I say by feathering when I foil, I tilt my brush vertically or diagonally, just so I can get a little bit closer. Good deal. So I fold her on up here. Boop, 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 boop. And around the face for my money pieces, I do a tri-fold. And the reason I tri-fold is only for client comfort. Honestly, most of the time I just do a double. That's more so me. But because of client comfort and it's in their face, I like to tri-fold, okay? All right, very good. Now, my next one here, I'm gonna keep working along. So while you're doing your money piece, here's something that's really, really important. I did a slice first. My next one's gonna be a very dense baby light. And when I say dense, that means most of the hair is still gonna be in the foil. But here's something I want you to pay attention to, okay? Here, in this section, this piece right here is right on her hairline. So, something to really pay attention to, making sure that I get that piece in that foil, right? If I don't get this piece on the outer corner that's closest to her face in my foil, what will happen? What will it look like? Can't really grab the chat right now, but it's going to have a streak of dark right on her hairline, right? Absolutely. So I'm going to continue to go back in. And this is my more fine baby light section, okay? Sorry if you guys can't see. I'm trying to find a way here. Okay. So again, going in. So what I really like to do for my money pieces is I like to slice dense baby light. Slice dense baby light. You'll see some hairstylists that like to do slice, 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 right? Can you see that now? Slice, slice, slice. And that's fine if you like that way. Personally, for me, I like to go slice, baby light, slice, baby light. That's my jam. That's how I get good results. If I have someone that wants the most striking, you know, fashion forward money piece, I'm gonna adjust here. I'm gonna try and keep my hands out of the frame. Then I'll do slices all the way home. Okay. Fold her on up. Do my nice little tri-fold here. Okay, so that's 2, right? There we are, yay. See how little hair I left out of that baby light? It's not much. And the only reason I do that is just to give me a little bit of movement within my money piece. Okay. So now, again, I would go back and I would do a slice. She's got a lovely piece of chunk of dark here that we absolutely love. Okay. So I'm gonna keep rolling. So I'm gonna just tilt her here and I'm gonna continue on this pattern super quick. And I'm gonna talk about some other things that I like to do for my money pieces as well. Just because I know y'all are like, I've seen a foiling class 8 million times, right? So when we're working with money pieces, how many of you guys do money pieces on non-blondes? What about redheads and brunettes? Money pieces are not just for blondes, okay? I'm gonna put this foil in here. And again, I like to feather. I take a page out of the book of balayage for that one. Okay. Tri-fold for comfort. All right, so as I continue moving up, I want y'all to see something here. Everybody has a recession, right? Well, not every single person, but most people have a recession on their hairline. So something you really want to pay attention to while you're sectioning out your money pieces, where that recession is, you want to kind of carve it out a little bit in this, because if you don't, if you just make a straight line right here, right, it's going to look a little shallow right in that recession. So customizing your money piece for your client is really important, super important, because everybody's head shape is like super different. So then I would go back and I would baby light again. I think y'all catch my drift. Now, if you're someone that you're a nervous birdie, right? Maybe you're a little nervy. That's fine. This is a good time, now that I've put 3 foils in, and you maybe want a little bit of a softer money piece and you don't want to have to rely on your gloss and tone formula so much, this is where you could start teasy lighting, okay? So the other mistake people make while they teasy light is this. They go crazy. They're sitting here and they're doing this, right? And they're backcombing, 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 backcombing. What you want to do is make sure that it stays nice and controlled for 2 reasons. One reason being, if you do it in a controlled fashion, combing it out will be a breeze. The other reason is you'll have more control of your cushion here. Because if you have a ton of pressure on this outer corner, your back combing is going to be a lot more intense here, and you're not going to get a predictable result. So, something I want you to do is, when you start teasy lighting is, place your comb towards probably about almost a foot, whatever that looks like, several inches away, and then go upwards. Okay? And then secure again, making sure it's nice and good. Okay, see that back comb? I don't want so much back combing that I lose control of how much is in there, right? When you are teasy lighting, you're using it as a security blanket. You're trying to make sure that you have a nice seamless blend. And having a tight teasy light like this is enough. However, if you're someone that you like to teasy light to high heaven, great. All the more power to you, sister. I love you for it. For me, I like to keep a tight back comb here because I have more control. It's all about that control for me. If you guys can't tell by now, I am a control freak. So, when I go in, I place that underneath the back combing, right? There are several reasons why I don't want to drift too much into my back combed area. And one of them is just bleeders and spots. If your lightener hits a spot that has a lot of back combing, you might get a little bit of a cheetah print spot, right? So what I like to do when I foliage and teasy light, I do the same thing. I like to blend upwards to make sure I have a seamless blend. Remember, anytime you're balayaging or foliaging, right, even color melting, to build saturation, you go this way. So when you're trying to build saturation, down. When you want to blend saturation, we move up. Things like that. When you see small amounts of drag, what we like to refer to as drag, so you see they've got a little bit of lightener on them, don't panic about that. I promise you, don't panic. I promise, promise, promise. It's really honestly, if anything, gonna help you in the long run to give you a seamless blend. What you wanna be careful of is getting a big spot in your back combing, all right? And again, super important, here's your back combing cushion, right? Do I want to bring my foil all the way up and over my back combing? Nah, girl, because then I'm really gonna get bleeders. I wanna place my foil at the start of my lightener, because if I overfold, then I'm gonna get my bleeding marks in my teasy light, okay? And for this one, I'm far enough off the face, I just double fold. All right. Now again, here's my last section here, and I'll back comb this one as well. And again, I'm starting lower and back combing upwards. If you're focusing too much at the regrowth area here, like you're in your like zone 1, zone 2 area, and you just violently back comb there, you're honestly creating more work for yourself than less. If you start lower in the hair strand, you're gonna get a faster, quicker, easier to comb out back comb, okay? And then when I come up here, I'm just securing, making sure my cushion is nice and in place, doesn't go anywhere when I do this, okay? So this was a slice. Fold my hole, live that life. I'm gonna tuck her right under that back combing spot there. Place my saturation. Making sure, so for me, I wait to feather in my foil until the last second. The last thing I do is usually feather. And the reason that is that I also use feathering to tighten up my foil to make sure it's where it belongs. Okay? So again, I'm gonna go up here, feather my way up. So it looks like that. Bloop. And because this is on her hairline right here a little bit more, I'm gonna bring it up just a smidge. We want to be really cautious of where we're placing our color in regards to the face shape, right? So that is my last for that guy. Now, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 foils. And this is how much leave out we have. Not a whole lot, right? So if you have someone that wants super solid money piece effects, I know it doesn't seem like a lot here. I could leave this out, but something I like to do is just tip these ends. Just softly tip them, so that way it's all a cohesive look. And I don't fuss too much about it. The whole point is I just want those ends in that money piece to be solid blonde. All right, do we have any questions on that? We feel good. I know it's nothing too crazy, but if I flip her upside down, you can kind of see how much hair is left out there, right? Cool. And I was just working diagonally back from the head. And the reason I work diagonally back from the head was because diagonals in foiling give us softness. So if you're doing a horizontal line like that, you're gonna get coverage, right? Versus a diagonal is gonna give you a lot more smoothness. And then a vertical line is where you're gonna get your highest amounts of contrast. So Kelly Clarkson, more stripy, ribbony pieces of color, okay? All right, so no surprise, no surprise. I'm gonna do the same in this area, right? So because I am a control freak and this is a really wide piece, I would actually separate this into 2 foils here because I'm a control freak and I want to make sure it's as saturated as possible. I be how I be, right? Boop. And this is the one that really counts, right? This is the one. The one your clients see. So I'm going to split this into 2 because I'm a psycho. I admit it freely. I know who I am. place that on in there. If my comb will slip out. There we go. So I know there's a few of you in here. What Salon Republic locations are all of you from? Are you from the same one? Are you from different ones? Am I amongst all California people here? Trying to look. I've got 2 screens up, so I'm trying to see. If I do have all my California people here, I'm sure some of you are probably feeling a little discouraged about our current state of affairs in regards to safer at home and quarantines. I feel you. I'm in the same exact boat. I know a lot of us are just dying to get back to work, for sure. And that's okay. I'm a really big believer that it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad about it. You don't have to be super positive, sunshine all the time. Okay. Bloop. Baby foil. All right. Let's continue going here. So, I'm almost done with this foil placement. I know it's nothing crazy groundbreaking, but let's talk a little bit about glossing, toning, and root shadowing. Okay? How comfortable are all of you with glossing, toning, root shadowing? What are your struggles? Is it, was it Yesenia that said that or Courtney? Courtney said she struggles with proper formulation. So what part of it is a struggle for you? Is it a hard time deciding if something's too dark? How dark is a low light or a shadow root? Fingerprints, right? Those are other ones I hear all the time. Little shield around the face here. Trying to see. Okay. So I would continue on here. Again, nothing groundbreaking. Mannequin hair, I tell you. All right. So obviously she has to process, but I do hope to put her up on my Instagram so you guys can see what that looks like. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Okay. All right. Baby light. All the lightener in the world. Also, in terms of ratios for lightener, for me, when I'm doing a money piece, I usually like to mix my lightener a little bit thicker just for control. That's all. Normally, I'm a 1 to 1.5 girl, but for this purpose, sometimes 1 to 1. All right, pop her in. Let's do this in 1 here, and again, I'm gonna keep it tight to her head as well. All right, foils, I've had enough. Heard enough. Okay. Just gonna finish this one up super quick. Now, For our next portion, I have my little mannequin all ready to go about how we're gonna gloss and tone at the same time. We're gonna freehand low light and add depth and dimension to someone that's an all over foil. So say you just foiled someone. Sorry, feather that up there. You just foiled someone and now you wanna add in a little bit of depth. Or maybe you're in a situation where you over blonded someone and you took out the dimension you meant to leave behind to create that money piece, right? We've all done it. We've all been there. Personally, for me, I could just foil all day because I love it so much. So I have a tendency to over foil. All right. So here's another one. I'd go in, redirect, and paint her ends. Again, there's not a lot of leave out here, but it's enough that I would give it too much of a blended look and less of a money piece melt. Whoop. Okay. Voila. Right? So I like to incorporate a lot of elements of balayage into my money piece foil, for sure. Because that's how I make sure that the ends are gonna be nice and solid and blonde, okay? Okay. Oof. Let's take a step back here and I'll introduce you to Ellie number 2. All right, so as I said, this would be a scenario that we're creating a money piece. We're creating a money piece without lightener. Gosh, the light balance on here is nuts so bananas. All right, so when I take her hair down, here, she looks more solid foiled, right? She's a solid foil. A blorangey solid foil at that, right? Lovely blorange. So that's where she be. And now what we're going to talk about is what happens when you're in the situation that you do over blonde and you do lose your money piece. How do we go about that, right? So I've already sectioned out a similar area as to what we did in our last foil. That's going to be her money piece area. So when I'm doing money pieces and I'm toning and depositing, so you've already foiled them, right? You foiled them and now you want to gloss and tone. Okay, that is all well and good, but I leave the money piece out specifically. And the reason I do that is it's a law of color. It doesn't matter what color line you use, right? Color that you place first is gonna inevitably look darker than the color you place last, right? So if you're toning and you start with the money piece, it will inevitably get either too dark or too intense, right? It's happened to us. So I don't even mess with it. I don't even play games. I section it out and I know that comes last because I also treat the money piece differently, okay? All right. Move this here. How many of you are Shades EQ users? Anybody? Any Shades EQ users in the house? Okay, Courtney, I'm catching up on my chat here. Courtney, more about charging for extra services when using shadow roots. Client don't understand the extra work. No, they don't. Here's the thing. Clients don't know what they don't know, right? So, it's really, 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 really important. Sorry, I'm just gonna catch up on my chat here, making sure I'm in the right place. Okay, so it's really important that it's our job to communicate to our guests the charges. We have to talk about money with our guests all the time. It's just part of our obligation as professionals. So there's a couple different ways you could go about this. And I personally think that right now during quarantine and while we're out of work is the perfect time to revamp our services. So for me, being a blonding specialist, and if it's a money piece service, so something you could point out, if a client comes to you and they show you a picture that has a money piece in it, in my head, I automatically know that I am going to be doing a shadow root and toning them. Granted, most of my blondes get a shadow root and tone anyway. So when I'm discussing with them about that service, my quote will always include that amount. Okay? So granted, that leaves your clients that have been getting these services for a while, right? And maybe they've been getting away with it for really cheap or free. And like, be honest, we all do it. We all give away that shadow root or that tone for free sometimes because we know the client needs it even if they're not willing to pay for it. How many of you have done it? Be honest, I used to do it all the time. I was like the biggest offender of doing that. So it's really, really, really important. I encourage all of you right now, before our books are back open again, if all of you are still in California, I assume, or if you have already opened, start reaching out to your clients now. Maybe your closest clients that you know really well, via text, social media, whatever works, when you're trying to reschedule them, right? And obviously we can't offer them a reschedule at this moment, but it's a really great time to do a virtual consult and talk about beauty budget, right? We're also gonna have to talk about an added charge anyway for the amount of PPE we are going to use or provide for our clients. I've talked to a lot of people that are open and almost all of them are doing additional charges for PPE because it's a lot. It's a lot. So it's important that we discuss those things with them. And it's a perfect time to let them know these premium services, right? If they want a shadow root melt and tone, they're gonna have to pay for it. So for me, most of my blonding services already included the price of a shadow root and tone because almost all of my blondes are shadow root and toned. So I add in that cost automatically. And it did take a while for me to train my clientele in that way, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And you're worth it, girl, you're worth it. The hard work you do should not go unpaid or unnoticed. Okay? Does anybody else have questions? Are we good on that? I can elaborate more. I could talk about money all day. All day. But it also depends, if you want to talk about charging extra, do a little bit of market research. What does that service cost around you? For me, my foils, it's just built in. And honestly, that's worked really well for me because I haven't had to even have the discussion with my client about whether they need it or not, because my blondes go home with a tone every time. Every time. Regardless. No matter what, they go home with a tone. Even if there's someone that says that they hate a toner, I still do clear gloss on them. And the reason I do that is because, especially Shades EQ is acidic. So what that means is, after you lifted someone with lightener, all the way up to a 12 on the pH scale, when our hair naturally lives at a 4.5 to 5.5, just a clear glaze alone is acidic, and it's going to shut down the cuticle and help it bring it back to a healthy acidic pH. So even my clients that are like, I hate toner, it makes me dark, they still get a clear gloss because it's treating their hair at the same time and protecting it. So now could be a great time for you to start rolling that into your price model if you're comfortable with that. If you're not, girl, DM me, let's talk about it. All right? I can talk about money all day. All right. So, again, this is our lady. Our lady, our lady, our lady. Very blonde, right? She's very blonde. It's a little too much. So, she's a mannequin I inherited from the Redken Exchange, and I wanted to make her lighter for this class, but honestly, her hair probably can't take it. So, we got to work with what we got in quarantine, right? As I said, isolated that piece here, and we're going to do the work here first, and then we're going to move to that money piece. So what level do you guys think she is? What would you say? What are your thoughts? Anybody have guesses? No? That's okay. That's okay. All right. So I know a lot of you break down your color applications into the 4 quadrants, right? We learned about that in beauty school. 4 quadrants, standard, easy. And I do a similar thing, all right? I do 4 quadrants, but I modify it ever so slightly. And it's a really important distinction here. So this area normally would cut off here. This is her perfect headband. You know, when they say 4 quadrants, headbands, all that good stuff. It would be right about there. But I actually drop my 4 quadrants behind the apex of the head. And the reason I do that is so I don't get dog ears. How many of you have done 4 quadrants while toning or foiling, and all of a sudden this front area looks cohesive, but then the transition to the back is like craziness. It doesn't flow at all, or it has a little gap. What will really help with that is dropping this apex back a little bit. Help a ton, because then you'll have a cohesive field. It's almost like a curtain falling over the rest of the hair. And yes, your sectioning does matter that much. It really do be that way. All right. And also, to Courtney's point, what I want to mention too is that time is money. If your client notices you putting in extra time, they should expect to pay for it. You know, it is a whole nother color service, and I do explain it to my clients that way. If you want a basic foil, you can have a basic foil, but if you want a Pinterest picture, honey, you gotta pay for it. That's how it works. All right, so let's see here. I have my light and dark formulas already pre-mixed. Again, because she's like a level 7, 6, 7, well, she's like a 70, 60, 78, right? She's just very blorangey. And honestly, y'all, we're gonna have quite a bit of blorange clients in our chairs when we get back to work, because a lot of our clients didn't resist the temptation to box dye their hair at home, right? We're gonna see a lot of that. It just is what it is. So to make this money piece pop in this contrast, what I'm gonna do is I'm using a 5. Just Shades EQ 05N. That way her money piece can really pop and shine. So anytime you want higher amounts of contrast, you want to work at least 2 levels different. If you're working within 1 level, say I did a 5 and 6, everything would look very blended and very one-dimensional. If I do 2 levels, I'm going to start to see more contrast, 3 levels, even more, so on and so forth. So I really like to work within 2.5 levels to 3 levels contrast when I want a more popping money piece here. All right. So the first thing I do, I'm gonna move y'all closer, is I lay my shadow root first and foremost, right? I'm gonna lower her just a smidgen. And I start in this back corner. So when I do shadow roots, I go diagonal sections, because again, I'm trying to create softness. Softness, softness, softness. So for my dark formula, I don't know how familiar y'all are with Shades EQ, but I utilize the Precision Application Glossing solution. So what that means is, if you guys have ever used the regular processing solution, it's very liquidy, right? The Precision Application Gloss to Gel, it just gives it a little bit more thickness. So I like using it for retouches, shadow roots, etc., because it stays put a little bit better. All right, So I'm going to go through and I'm going to lay that shadow root here. Again, nothing crazy. When I'm doing my shadow roots, I start at the top. Start at the top. That's my go-to way for shadow rooting. And I'll show you why in a second. Making sure I'm saturated in all parts that matter. Making sure I'm taking care not to over-direct into that money piece. So how many of you feel like shadow rooting is either too messy for you, it doesn't go where you want it to go, maybe that shadow root ends up being too long, or Courtney had said formulation can be a problem as well. So if Courtney wants to elaborate, I'd love to hear more about your formulation struggles so I can help y'all out. The most common thing I see with shadow root formulations is sometimes they're too ashy. They don't have enough warmth, so they don't grip to the hair the right way. That's a really big common one. I love utilizing the new matte family, the M's, because they have a nice earthy base, but they have a cool reflex. So they're going to give you a really balanced shadow root, which I love. So right now, I'm keeping my shadow root to about 1 inch. And what you'll notice is, see how close I am to my money piece? I'm directing the hair away from the face. Because what would happen if I was painting this way? Think about that for a second. If I were painting down towards the face, there's a couple things that could happen, right? One, again, client comfort, right? You don't want to get color on their face. But I'm going to over-direct into that money piece. And then I'm going to start getting dark low lights in a money piece that I don't want them to be in. And again, I'm not even touching that money piece yet. Not even coming near it. No thank you, not today. And again, I'm painting away from that money piece. Away. All right, taking care there. Getting closer and closer. She's a mannequin, she doesn't mind. Just want her to be out of my way. So I'm keeping it to about 1.5 inches right now for my shadow root. That's what I'm planning on. All right. Shadow root is laid. Courtney says, what level do you like your shadow roots to start at and blend down to? So it totally depends on the hair, right? So for her, right now, we're doing a darker shadow root. And the reason we're doing a darker shadow root and a whole darker gloss overall is that her hair is darker, right? She's like a blorangey 7. So she needs a darker contrast, right? If I want to keep her lightest pieces at a 7, I know that her depth needs to be a 5, at least, in order to get that contrast that I'm looking for. Because again, I said I like to operate between 2.5 to 3 levels in contrast. That's kind of my rule of thumb. When I formulate for lighter blondes, right? So maybe your platinums or your level 9s that are really light. Usually my shadow roots are usually at about an 8. I love doing the 8M in Cover Plus. That's one of my go-tos. I love the 07M in Shades EQ Gloss with equal parts clear. That's one of my new favorite shadow formulas. I love that one. Or I do a lot of NB, so natural beige, and natural ash formulations in Shades EQ Gloss. So either if that's equal parts, maybe one more than the other, depending on the cool or warm reflect that I want. Those are my go-tos. So what I did was I laid that shadow root, right? I laid it all. There she is. Just a really basic one. Nothing crazy. So remember, again, our whole point of today is money pieces. So I actually want there to be a little bit more depth in this section here. So here's my rule of thumb. Everything above the parietal ridge is the round of the head, correct? So if someone wants to look like a blonde but still have enough dimension to be a money piece, what I really like to do is underneath the parietal or the round of the head is where most of my darkness is gonna go. Okay, most of my darkness is gonna go there because again, more depth underneath my parietal is gonna give me dimension and depth, but it's not gonna show to the top of the head. So it's still gonna look like a blonde up here, but when they curl it, all of these darker pieces of depth are gonna come singing through the bottom. And I still weave them up through here, but honestly, I sometimes do more dark throughout here than I do up here. Now again, if someone wants to feel like a bright blonde with minimal dimension, that's a little bit different. I might still do equal parts low light to highlight down here, okay? So I'll show you what I mean. I laid that shadow root here. So I'm gonna go through. And I like to take really big pieces. And the reason I like to take thicker pieces is because one, I'm working with Shades EQ, right? So when I work with Shades EQ, it's more forgiving because it's a liquid color and it can cover ground a little faster. Same with our Color Gels lacquers is a similar deal. You can just cover ground faster, it moves quicker, all of these things. So there's my shadow root. Later on down, I almost dropped that color on my hardwood floor. That would have been bad. So this has already been processing for a certain amount of time. And what I want you to imagine is I did the whole head's retouch first, like I would a gray coverage retouch. So it's already been sitting longer and therefore is going to be a little bit deeper. Okay? Then what I did was, to my existing formula that I had, I added clear. So I added about probably a ½ ounce of clear to a ½ ounce of processing solution. And what that's gonna do is help me get a seamless transition from one to the other, okay? Painter on here. And I like to work that in. So some of you might be combers. Do some of y'all like to comb? Are you non-combers? I personally don't do a lot of combing, just out of personal preference, really. No more than that. So what I'm doing is, you can kind of see I'm feathering down almost like I would a balayage, right? So underneath the parietal, something I like to do is I like to mimic like a balayage. Imagine a balayage. I'm doing a backwards pattern, so it's going to be a little lighter up front to darker back here. Right? Creating that point of light. Then I'm going to go in with my other formula here, and I'm going to paint on the ends, mimicking that exactly here. Underneath the parietal, this is the method that I follow. And the reason I do that is because I want this to have some depth, but I still want her to be solid blonde on her ends, remember? So with a blonde, what's gonna help you remain more of a solid blonde with dimension is keeping their ends light. If you start pulling that low light all the way through, they might start looking too foily or too blended. Okay? Now, I'm gonna take another big section here, and now I'm at the round of the head. So a similar deal. I'm gonna do exactly what I did on my last one. My lovely 5N with clear. Dragging it down a little bit more in this back corner. Using very light hands. And again, you could be a person that you like to do this on a technique board. Maybe you like to do it in a foil. Whatever you want. For me, I'm just a tactile stylist, so I really like to get my hands in there That's how I roll. But I always have a towel. Always, always, always. It's on my hands. Yes, it might take me more time to rub my hands off at every single turn. However, honestly, for me, it's worth it. But again, teach their own. So, I really do like to blend that mid area here. Now, here's something I want you to think of. When I'm going in and I'm doing that motion, right? I'm blending these areas in. Now, it's important to note that I always have space between my fingers. So if you're going in and you're doing what we call a windshield wiper, right? And your fingers are closed tight. Think about that. They're closed tight. And you're blending really tight like this. What happens? Obviously, this is a very dramatic example, but you're not blending, you're wiping product away. So be very cautious about the amount of tension that you do use. That section's gonna be a little messed up looking later, but you know, hey, it is what it is. Such is life. All right. All right, so that's underneath the round of the head. Now, the section that I am gonna do next, I'm gonna switch my direction. So here I was doing horizontal placement. And as I said earlier, horizontal lines are gonna give you coverage, right? They're gonna give you coverage here. Now, I'm gonna switch to a diagonally vertical line, and that's gonna be right behind the money piece. So when I get to the round of the head, what I like to do is, instead of working this way up the head, right? I like to switch my direction this way. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here's our money piece here. Obviously, to build that dimension, this piece here has to be pretty dark, right? Because I need to build that contrast. Now, I'm a visual person, as a lot of us are. So here's where her shadow root is so far. I immediately am gonna go in and drag it to a place that I think it looks nice. Normally, I like to create this motion, right? Boop, because I like that flow. And so when I do this up top here, it's gonna give me a guide for the rest of my hair. So this is gonna be a more dramatic example. You know, this is a true shadow root, right? This isn't just a baby root tap, which I also love, don't get me wrong. More helpful this way. All right, so again, I'm gonna work away from my money piece section. Work away. I'm gonna take about 1 inch vertical sections. See that there? And then I'm gonna paint this way. Just drag that down until I like it. And again, the closer to the crown of the head, the longer I want the shadow root to be, because I like that halo, that teardrop shape. Okay, and then my light formula, I haven't mentioned that yet, but my light formula, remember she's like a 7, right? She's 7-y. So her light formula is a 7NB, which I love 7NB. So it's 2 parts 7NB to 1 part 08 GN, green natural. And then another part clear. So 50% of my formula is 7NB, 25% of my formula is 08 GN, and another 25% is clear. How many of y'all are terrified? Terrified of green? Don't lie to me. I know there are several people that are. And it's okay. You can be. But I'm telling you, a GN is amazing. They're so good. They make just these beautiful natural results. They're my favorite. So this one, I did a little bit more shallow in that shadow root area. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna place my light piece here. I also want you guys to think of how often is it that you switch up how you tone your client? Think about in your head, you know, when was the last time that you switched up the way that you applied a toner or the way you applied a all over color? It's not often, right? A lot of us, we apply a tone and a gloss the exact same way we would place, you know, a regular root shadow. But I challenge you to elevate that a little bit. Elevate that placement. Tap into the artistry, right? Y'all are artists. You're professionals and artists. And I think sometimes as hairstylists, we get caught in our own habits, right? We do the same thing that we always do. And we wonder why we don't get different results. When really, we just need to start shifting the way we do things and start customizing it a little bit more, right? So now this one, I'm getting closer to my money piece, right? So this next one, I'm gonna pull what a freehand lowlight is all the way through. I'm gonna take a really small piece here, not even 1/4 of an inch, not even 1/4. And this one is one that I'm gonna drag almost all the way through to the ends, almost. And remember, this formula that I'm dragging through has clear in it. So it's a little bit lighter than this one that we put on right away. It might not process that way, but it is. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this almost all the way through. This is how much I have left out there. And I'm just gonna tip that. Here. I'm gonna tip that on the back of my hand because the back of my hand is a clean palette so I don't waste any time. And I over direct away from the face. Again, client comfort. Super important. Okay. Now here we are. We're getting close to that really important depth piece. As I get closer to the money piece, I start to alternate a little bit. It gets a little bit more. So here I took a pretty seasoned piece, pretty large piece here. Okay. And I'm actually gonna weave this piece. And this is when I talk about freehand low lighting, okay? So I'm actually gonna weave this piece like so. And I like to have them to be pretty large. So here's one, here's the other. I'm gonna isolate that over here. This is one that I'm just gonna tap a little bit. But it's gonna be mostly blonde or lighter formula. Some of you wouldn't classify a 7 as a blonde. So when I'm doing this, what I'm doing is I'm creating a staggered effect. It is true, if you're doing the exact same, if you struggle with shadow roots, right? If you place your shadow root in the exact same place, if you move up the head in the exact same way, and you place your shadow at the exact same thickness, or length each time, it's not gonna be very blended. It's gonna be very uniform. It's gonna look a lot more harsh because you're stacking all those effects on top of another, right? So when I'm up here, the reason that I made this shadow root a little bit more narrow, right? And the blonde came up higher versus this next one, I'm gonna pull the dark down a little bit lower and tip the ends with blonde. That's because I'm trying to create a really soft effect. I want it to be very pretty, very natural. I want it to be able to move and look like this girl was just blessed with beautiful hair. I'm a stylist that I like a lot of movement. I like things to look very pretty and moving and with ribbony pieces of color that don't fight each other. All right, so this one I dragged about halfway through. You can see that there. But the last one, I only did that level 5 for about 1.5 inches or so. maybe 2 inches. So this I dragged halfway through the hair strand. And I know some of you are probably like, ugh, this girl, this is too much work. I'm not doing it, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you, when you get used to this, this goes lightning fast. Lightning fast. It's like applying a retouch color with a gloss. It's super easy. So this piece here, this is important, right? This is right in front of that money piece, correct? This is going to be mostly dark. Almost all dark. Because again, you cannot have the contrast of light without dark to stand on. You know, there's a lot of very Pinteresty quotes that are all about, you know, you can only build strength from darkness and you can only become stronger because of darkness. It's a similar concept with hair, really. You know, your lighter money piece is really going to show through beautifully when you have darkness for it to pop on. So I want you to think of a stage. Do me a flavor and think of a stage. Okay? So that stage, imagine the curtain closed. And then imagine our lovely Ellie being right in front of that curtain with a spotlight on her. The curtain behind her is going to allow her to be front and center, right? That dark curtain is going to make sure that she shines light and bright. Versus if that curtain was drawn, she would kind of blend into the set behind her. That's what I want you to imagine. Okay? So we just painted that little low light here. Now for our actual money piece. Ta-da! You are going to be tempted to add a lot of low light in here because it looks very jarring. It looks very scary. Right? But you want this to be mostly light, right? So I'm going to point something out to you. The brushes you select are very important here. So when I'm doing small detail work, short bristles that are stiff, right? And it's a narrow brush compared to this other one I was using earlier, right? This is double rowed and it's wider. So when I'm doing detail work, I need that. So I charge my little brush up. And this is when your tap comes in handy, right? Your little tap. Okay. So working that in there. And I will also use when I really want control, I use this as a palette on the back of my hand to make sure my brush isn't overcharged. And then I go to outline this area here. I drag that down to where it feels comfortable. Then I move to this is the interior, right? If I pull that back, that's her money piece, right? So I'm going to start by working here. Working here. And I'm going to lay my color. Still shallow, nothing too crazy. And again, this is my color with clear in it. Push this away. Continuing to lay that color here. Now, I'm going to take this handy dandy boy, right? And I'm going to blend down. So what I like about this guy, it's got really soft bristles. It's based on a makeup brush, right? So it's got really soft bristles. And it's just going to help me blend downward without too much pressure and pushing all the way through. All right? Now, here's where I'm at. This is my money piece. She's coming through a little bit right there. And honestly, I just do the faintest of taps. Just the teeniest, tiniest whiff. Just a touch. Okay? So don't outline this front section. Don't outline that front section. Color in the back of it and slightly tap the front. The rest is all your light blonde formulas. And I'm just going in with that 7NB and 8GN because why? Tell me why I would go through the trouble of hyper blonding this area, right? Just to cover it up with depth. That don't make no sense. So of course, I'm gonna go for the gold here and go with my lighter blonde formula. So she's nice and pretty. Okay. And then same here. Okay, so what questions do you have? It's been such a quiet group today. It's almost the end of the week, maybe. Blending in these two as I go. No questions? Are we good? Saturating her all the way. And up in this top corner, I just overlap. Right? Same in here. So she will have a very strong money piece that is 2 levels in contrast with her shadow root and the darker pieces. And then always, always, mannequin or not, person or not. Oop. There she sits. Okay. So it's really important when you're doing a shadow root to make sure that you maintain your contrast. All right? Maintain your contrast at all opportunities. And then the finished result, I will shampoo these guys out and I will put them on my Instagram story. Oh gosh, the white balancing in here. Craziness. But it ends up like so. This was another one that was very blorangey. So she has that strong money piece, but it has that nice balance of contrast in throughout her hair. And I believe she was toned with a 08V. Okay, guys. Well, if you have any questions at all, feel free to DM me on Instagram. You know, Courtney had mentioned pricing and things like that. More than happy to talk about that with you because it's super important, especially before we go back to work. Hopefully before the end of the year, right? For those of us in California. And if you guys have any questions about anything at all related to business, Redken, etc., let me know. I'm more than happy to help you out. But for the meantime, I'm very happy you were with me. I'm sorry my video was in portrait mode because my phone got stuck today. But I'm happy to be here and I was happy to have you. Thanks for coming.